Hello, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning into my video. So, I wanted to make a short video. I'm hoping this will be a short video, but it's time for me to address the elephant in the room. Why do I have an accent? Or why do I not have an accent, depending on where you live in the world? So, for my entire life, it's actually weird. I've always gotten this question. People have always uh, wanted to know why I sounded differently. My earliest memory was I was in grade 4, and we had to do an oral presentation in front of the whole class. Now, it was my first year in this class, and I had never really spoken in class. Like, if anyone knows me, like I'm a true Cancerian. I'm a true Cancer. I'm very, like, especially when I was younger, I was very shy. I was very quiet, and just like I would just absorb, like, whatever, like, observe what other people are saying. You see, even though I have like an accent, and this is what people forget, or even though I speak English quote unquote well, I still make a lot of mistakes, which I think a lot of people assume I wouldn't, but I digress. Anyway, so I had to do this presentation in front of the entire class. I was very excited. I was going to speak about Queen Victoria. I remember standing there and I just started speaking, and I noticed everyone's eyes just go big. And I thought, wow, well, my presentation must be just so amazing. Girl, tell me why in South Africa, I live in South Africa. In South Africa, we have break time. We don't have like recess during, it's basically recess. So during break time, basically the whole class corners me. I'll never forget, there was this one girl, and she was the biggest bully, like, in my year. We ended up being friends, but she was the biggest bully in my year. And they just confronted me, and they were like, why do you sound like that? And I just remember it almost felt like every time somebody would ask me why I have an accent, there was always in their voice, like, I could feel the contempt. You know what I mean? I could feel it. And I could feel that they were accusing me of something. Because look, I'm not going to pretend like I don't know. Like, most people, when they meet me, they honestly just assume that I'm being pretentious. They assume I'm being pretentious, that I just woke up, put on an accent, and, I'm trying to impress people, which, everyone's allowed to think in what they want. But I don't know, since that incident when I was 10 years old, it kind of made me feel like, not that there was, yeah, it made me feel like there was something wrong with me. And that feeling just intensified as I got older. Like, it would get to the point when I was in King Williamstown. I remember clearly that I would, even now as an adult, I avoid English, like, I avoid speaking English. Like, I avoid speaking English at all costs if I'm dealing with another Black person. I try my very best to not even utter out one word, because I've had so many instances growing up. Like, I'd be talking to somebody, we're having this fat conversation in Xhosa, my native language. I forget a Xhosa word, and you just see the person look at you like, huh? And you're just kind of like, oh, just pretend. Like you want them to not dwell on it. You want them to not dwell on it. And every time, like, since I was a kid, I've always had anxiety about having to explain why I have an accent. So, before we get into the politics of English privilege, because there is some privilege that exists in being able to speak English well enough that people assume that it is your first language. Because most people, like, when they speak to me, they assume that English is my native language, well, most foreigners. there is some privilege to that. And I'm going to unpack that later in the video, and the issues that I have with that privilege. So I grew up, like I know you guys, I've talked about my upbringing, but I've never really gone into detail. I love my mother. My father died when I was 3. And when he died, my mom, as many people do, went into a deep, dark depression, which lasted years, actually. I mean, and during this time, like, my mom just never spoke to me. Like, there was never a relationship in the way that you imagine a mother-child relationship to be. Like, it was very much, I felt, I don't know if I was made to feel this way, but I felt that I was a nuisance, and I felt that I shouldn't even be seen. And it was very much that don't talk to me. Like, I was ignored. I was very much ignored. And it didn't help that I was so shy and withdrawn. So that just compounded the issue of me and my family not talking. I mean, the only sibling, like my brother, I don't speak to my brother, and it's not that anything has happened. It's we've never spoke. Like, I don't come from a family where people speak to each other. I was talking to my sister the other day, and she mentioned my brother, and she was like, yeah, like, I should probably contact him, but I don't have his number. I haven't had his number for years. And I'm like, I don't have his number either. And from the outside looking in, you would think, oh my goodness, your family dynamic is so toxic, but that's all that I've ever known. So growing up, I grew up watching television. We have to acknowledge the fact, and I grew up watching American television, so we have to be honest with ourselves. Yes, I've lived in the United States, but I was much older then. I was older. So television definitely played a part. How could it not have? I grew up in an era in the 90s, early noughties. True millennial. Uh, where we were just saturated with everything American. We were saturated with everything American. And the irony is, so I was born in 1989, and I'm part of the millennial generation that in South Africa that's different from all other generations, because essentially the South African millennial generation was the first generation in South Africa's history to truly be integrated, because we all started going to school in like the 1990s. And I remember in our integrated schools, we were not allowed to speak Xhosa. We were not allowed to speak our native language. There was, in many, many schools, there was a rule that, like, if you spoke your native language, like if I said, like if I said something like that, like they would hit me. Like I would get physically, a teacher would put their hands on me if I dare speak my native language. Now, if you're in that environment for 7 years, guess what? They're gonna wash white you. You're gonna be whitewashed. It doesn't happen to everyone, but a lot of us came out of that educational system mispronouncing our own names. My name's not Sasanda, my name's Sasander. Like, it's very common. We've all met people like that. We literally have all met people like that. And in that kind of environment where you are shamed from speaking your own language, and you are shamed for speaking English with a black accent, people would shame you all the time. Kids would make, as much as they made fun of me for having an American accent, there was always an air of envy that I could see in them. And definitely now as an adult, I can definitely tell you that there was some envy back then. Children are jealous of other children all the time for arbitrary reasons. And that was one of those arbitrary reasons. But my other classmates who came from poorer backgrounds, who didn't speak English as well as the majority of the class, they were also terrorized essentially. So there was almost like this big group of Black kids, and everybody agreed that this is how you're supposed to sound if you're a Black person. You can't sound too white, because then you're just thirsty for white people, and you can't sound too Black, because then you're just making us look bad. That was the message. It was like, if you sound too ghetto, you're making us look bad. And if you sound too white, oh my gosh, stop trying. And as a result, I remember I would get so angry. I would get so angry as a kid to the point I couldn't even speak in class. I wanted to do debate when I was a teenager. Girl, I will never do that and put myself in that, because what happened is all the Black kids, because I spoke a little bit differently, I was the target. So I definitely have insecurities even in my adult years about the way that I sound, because I know every time I speak English, someone has a reaction. Now, I grew up really not talking to my mom, and if anyone knows me, I grew up Mormon. So I was raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now, the Mormon Church is based in Utah, in Salt Lake City. Well, it's based in Utah. And my sister actually investigated the church first. So growing up, there were all these Americans coming in and out of our home, And for the first time in my life, I felt like, I don't want to say people loved me, because I understand now that it was all we were being groomed to be baptized. But being a kid that doesn't have anyone, and you don't have any friends, and you suddenly have people just saying nice things to you, like talking to you, like hugging you, like, you know what I mean? Like, it was the first time I started getting hugged and talked to. So I just clung on to that. I clung on to these people with everything that I had. And I was already talking kind of funny even back then. And my one friend actually said she's known me since I was 6 years old. So she's seen me as I grow. And she said, yeah, I noticed. She was like, you always sounded a little American, but I noticed your accent get deeper and deeper as you grew up. And it's crazy, because maybe at some subconscious level, I was trying to be like the people around me. Who knows? I was a kid. I was a kid. We're talking about like me at 10, 11, 12, 13, like here, I was a kid. So maybe at some subconscious level, I emulated the people that I spent the most time around, which is not uncommon. And even at 13, even at 12, despite the fact that these kids made fun of me, I understood that I had some level of social capital, because I spoke English the way that I did. Because not everybody said mean things. There are a lot of people that are like, oh my gosh, look at how you roll. You speak so nice. I get to listen to you all day. Like, I definitely got that. So let's talk about the concept of English as a privilege, the ability to speak English as though it were your first language. What does that mean? Is it even a privilege? I can definitely tell you, yes, it most certainly is a privilege. It most certainly is a privilege to speak as though it's your own language. The reason it's a privilege is that people assume so many things about you without knowing anything about your background. Often people who speak English really, really well have close proximity to whiteness. So usually somebody who sounds white, I want you to think of Colton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The reason he like fucking talked like, the reason he talked like that was because he lived in Bel Air and went to school with white people. Like, it's given that he's gonna sound like that. And the reason Will in the show sounded like that was He was from Philly. He was, you know what I mean? So people assume to know things about you just because you speak English well. And the most dangerous assumption is that you're intelligent. And I've always said this to people, just because somebody has an accent that sounds exotic or that sounds beautiful, that fool could be as ignorant as a mofo, and you wouldn't even know because you're caught up in how they rah 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 rah. Like it literally, like no, like I joke about myself, and I always say to people, like I understand why people don't understand me because it sounds like I have a mouthful of syrup when I speak, and it's crazy because language is a barrier, and English can be a barrier, and when you have an accent that is associated with poverty or struggle or not really being able to understand the language, people treat you some type of way. Often they treat you poorly, and it's terrible. Like I'll never forget. I went to an interview like with my previous corporate job, and I meet this girl, and we start bonding. We're laughing. I have my interview. My interview is about like an hour, 45 minutes. I had a long interview. I remember I pulled out presentations and like I was just doing the most. And my one friend said, we were so nervous when we saw you being interviewed. And they were nervous, I think, because of how I felt confident in that moment because I knew that English wasn't a barrier. I knew that it wasn't a barrier. I knew I wouldn't slip and stumble on any words. So I could just jump into that interview left, right, and center. So I get up and I'm all happy. My friend hasn't been interviewed yet. And then they were going to interview her. Now, like, I go outside and I'm like sitting, I'm on my phone. I must have been sitting for like 10, 15 minutes. Tell me why my friend comes out of the room. So I'm assuming, oh no, like, what did you forget? That was the end of the interview. That was the end of the interview. And I just remember thinking, because I'd spoken to her before and I forgot what she studied, but she was really, really smart, like really smart girl who got herself out of a difficult situation, studied, really, really smart, smarter than me. And I got the job. And I just remember, like, I was happy that I got the job, but there was a sobering reality. There was a sobering reality, and it dawned on me that wait, she lost an opportunity just because she don't sound white, just because she didn't sound white on the interview. And I know, okay, maybe that's a stretch. Let me not say she didn't sound white in the interview. I'm not trying to make racial arguments up in this space. But because it wasn't her first language, she struggled. And because, like, I could speak well enough, they took me for the job. So there's definitely a privilege that's associated to speaking English. So I understand why growing up, and even now in my adult years, why so many people resent me or have resented me. Sometimes it has nothing to do with me being trans or anything like that. It has to do with sometimes when people look at me, they assume things about me, and they assume that I'm putting this on, and I'm putting on this whole show, and I'm therefore being disingenuous. And it really is sad, but I just got to a point where I was like, I'm not going to now change the way that I am or the way that I speak or the way that I act because, some people want to feel some type of way. It was crazy because, like, as you guys know, like, I have lived in the US. Like, I definitely have, like, lived in Arkansas and I've lived in Utah. And it was it was crazy when I was in the States, and this is why I can safely say I personally don't like I do sound American, but not that American because every state I went to, people knew I wasn't from there. They were like, I think you're from somewhere in the States, but you're not from my state. No one in my state speaks like that because they know. They know, baby, they know. So it's always been funny. It's always been funny. Learning to love and accept yourself is hard. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's hard because anything that you can be given, whether it's good looks or maybe your parents are middle class or maybe they're rich or God willing, um, even if you have surgeries or like whatever you have, someone can look at it and get mad. And for the longest time, I would get mad too. I'd be like, well, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. I didn't decide. It's not my fault. And to make it worse, I would retaliate. And that's where I was problematic as well. I was very much a part of this problem, and I didn't realize that I was. I always thought when I would defend myself against people or when I would say mean things, like I just assumed tick for tack, do you want to talk crazy? I'm going to talk crazy. And now that I'm older and now that I look back and I'm like, Christabel, you didn't have to do that, girl, because I was the girl. Like if you came after me, I also came after you. That's why I forgive all my bullies, because I was just as bad. Like I wasn't innocent. No one who knew me in high school thinks that I was innocent. They knew I was bullied, but they also like there were times I had it coming. Um, I'll make a video of the type of person I was in high school. Um, but yeah, so yeah, like I do sound different, I guess, but it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things. I mean, I've been speaking like this now since I was a kid. So it's fair to say that if I tried to speak more South African, because like I have gone through stages where it gets too much, where it really gets too much. Like, can I be honest with you guys? Like, I don't tell people what my name is. So my name is Christabel. So it's if you can say Krista and if you can say Belle or if you can say Isabel or Christine, then Christabel should be easy. Not in South Africa. People, girl, I get called Jezebel, Instabel, a new depositing method. Like, Winstabel. Like, Isabel. I get Isabel a lot. I got Lucinda once. And I'm like, Lucinda and that doesn't even like rhyme, brah. It doesn't even rhyme. And oh, I get Krista Vel a lot. And I would always get angry. I would always get angry. I would always get angry. I would always get angry because I always assumed Christabel was easy to pronounce. But then again, that's just my English privilege and me assuming that everybody else in the world speaks English to the same degree as I do. Everybody else in the world is familiar with every single English or Italian type name. You know what I mean? There's so many people who've never met an Isabel or Christine. So when they hear you, Christabel, they're like, over the phone, I'm speaking to this guy. And in South Africa, they have this thing. If your last name is a black last name like mine, they will send Xhosa speaking telemarketers. If you have an English name, they'll send English speaking telemarketers. So I always get these people calling me on the phone, and they're like, I almost did an accent, and I'm proud of myself that I didn't. But they'll call me and they'll be like, hello, miss, Chayana. We're interested in selling this product to you. And then at some point they'll say my name and be like, Krista Mabeleza. And I'm like, that's not, brah, I don't have a Z in my fucking name, brah. Like, I don't. And I've had people get offended. Telemarketers get mad at me because I have an accent. But But like, it does get frustrating. It does get frustrating, and as long as I'm in South Africa, no, like I'm not going to tell people I'm Christabel. Like I'll either write it down or I'll tell them my name is Kay. Like I'm not doing that to myself. Like I feel it's the height of disrespect for you to purposely not like to not say my name correctly. And I get that I have an accent, and I get when I speak, it sounds like I just have a mouthful of syrup, but it gets tiring. It does get tiring. But in all of these things that, we deal with, you need to learn to love yourself and love the things that other people don't love about you. Because if I didn't speak this way, like, it wouldn't be me. Like, I very much feel like it wouldn't be me. Like, it wouldn't, it would just, it comes with the package. It comes with the package. And sometimes we have a hard time accepting that. We think that, oh, if this one thing could just go away from me, just please go away so people will leave me alone. Like if it just went away, I would be happier. But no, like we can't rip away small pieces of you in order to make ourselves feel comfortable. You know what I mean? And whether it's that you're a little bit curvier, or you have a little bit of an accent, or it's the opposite. Because I actually think that my experience, what I'm dealing with, the people that I have the most in common with are the people who don't speak English well, because I kind of feel they experience what I go through amplified. I feel like Black people and non-Black people that don't speak English as the first language and speak kind of funny, I feel like it's worse for them. And you have to just go on YouTube, to see how English privilege is a thing. It really, really is a thing. I was talking to my friend, and we were just talking about how, like, on YouTube, if you ever go on these tutorials to fix your phone, they're usually done by these, Indians. And of course, if you're an Indian and you're from India, I'm not going to be shocked if you have an accent, and I'm not going to demonize you for having it. Girl, go to the comment section. I'm an extremely sensitive person. Some of those people had me in tears. The way I'm like, don't do the Indians like that, bruh. Like, what did they do to y'all? What did they do to y'all? So, like, to all of my beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lovelies out there, don't ever let anyone make you feel bad because of the way that you talk. There was a guy, like, the guy I almost canceled because he came after one of my friends and the way he talks. So, yeah, that's where it comes from. Now you know. Every time somebody in the comment section asks me where I get my accent from, I'm gonna link this video. I swear I'm gonna link this video. And also, like, yeah. But anyways, I'm trying to not make this long, but I love you, and I'm trying to avoid the sun in my face. All right, I love you guys so much. Bye.